This is Tuscany, a district of western Italy. Two men are on their way to start an experiment in a nearby village. The young man on our left is going to live and work amongst the villagers. His companion planned the experiment.
Non parla più? Stavo pensando. Mi sembra un'impresa affascinante, ma difficile. E certo è difficile. Ma lei crede veramente che I contadini accetteranno?
But what they're going to do reflects a problem present all over the world. Today, 3 people in every 5 live on the land. Most are peasants, growing crops mainly to satisfy their own needs. For the relatively few, there are schemes of material assistance or capital development. But for most, the return they get on their work seems cruelly small by modern standards. Often and often, there are improvements that they could make. But when it comes to the point, the idea of change seems unpleasant, even dangerous. Wherever the question of facing change comes up, it will all hinge on human nature. Life, labor, and custom become set in rigid patterns. To alter them may set up social, religious, or economic problems. There are so many good reasons for not changing. There are some fortunate communities in the world where the climate is kind. Life is easy. Why change? There are many more who have to struggle for a bare existence. But here, too, you're the more reluctant to experiment. You come to believe you cannot risk change. In Europe, the problem is just as real, though more localized. People living only a few miles from a factory city may remain isolated from all the skills and efficiencies an exchange economy can offer. In Italy, more than 40% of the working population earn their living from agriculture. Often the peasants live in large villages a long distance from the land where they work. There is frequently underemployment in the rural areas. But this surplus labor cannot find a place in industry unless industry itself has a healthy home market for its goods. And many of the peasants are too poor to be effective consumers. It comes to this. The whole future prosperity of the country depends on raising the purchasing power of the peasants, on the transition from a subsistence to a marketing economy. But how to persuade people that progress doesn't necessarily cost much money? How inspire people to try something new? How create the will to active initiative? Where to begin? These questions worried the young man, too, before he started on his new job. It was explained to him that he was not going in order to make any sudden changes. It was merely a question of gradually introducing new methods without involving the peasants in running risks. The ultimate aim was to increase, if only a little, their yields and their net incomes. They are people who find it very difficult to make ends meet. It would be easier to help them in some practical way as well, such as supplying seeds, fertilizers, or equipment. Easier, but it would be a mistake. They must bear the cost themselves. In the end, people want to look back and see that they have done things themselves. In this way, they will come to make their own progress. The young man still questioned the result. Even if things go well, a few thousand peasants will be better off. And then, you must remember that the district chosen is a typical one. There are thousands like it in Italy, and tens of thousands throughout the world. The results obtained in this particular district will be true for millions of people. Do you see what a far-reaching problem this is? But look, we have arrived. We can discuss all this again later. Borgo a Mozzano is a village like many others in Italy. It has its main street, the Corso as it is called by everybody. It has its shops. A bar. cinema, an inn, the church, and its town hall. The commune numbers 8,000 inhabitants, extends over an area of about 17,000 acres, and contains no less than 16 hamlets. Some are in the valley as Anciano, others on the hillside as Rocca, and some in the mountains with only a mule track to the outside world, as Cusana or Cuna. It is a district of ancient civilization. The wonderful secular and religious buildings which one comes across constantly bear witness to the centuries of history lived through by this little plot of land. It seems, however, that at a certain moment, history came to a standstill. One has only to follow the sun in its daily course and observe the life of these people to have the impression of looking at an ancient illuminated manuscript. Then something new began to happen. The young man had changed the jeep for a motorcycle. He rode around the district all day long, and nobody understood the reason why. Before he could see what possibilities there were for improvement, it was necessary first to get to know the land and the peasants' methods of working it. Here he measures a plot of land. Now he observes a grape through a strange-looking instrument. He examines a leaf through a magnifying glass. Takes a photograph. Here he is measuring the flow of water from a spring with the help of a stopwatch. No wonder that the peasants watch him somewhat suspiciously. Who is he? What is he doing? Why is he meddling with the thing as though the place were his?
Ehi, giovanotto! Ma che cerca da queste parti? Ah, buongiorno. Guardavo il gran turco di questo campo. Mi sembra molto stentato. Questo non la riguarda, sono fatti miei. A me i piccanassi...
The farmer has no patience with meddlers. A pity, because the agronomist thinks he could double his harvest.
Grazie, io fumo il toscano. Ma lei chi è? Un agronomo. Ah, un dottore. Allora, scusi.
Oh, dottore, I took you for a tax collector.
Non si sa mai. Dunque diceva che il mais è brutto.
I know my maize is poor. It's the earth that's poor. Then there's the pest, the drought. Oh, believe me, sir, it's a bad job.
È un mestieraccio. Non si sta mai in pace. Mai. Qualcosa si può fare, ne riparleremo. Per me parliamone pure. Ma io ho poca fiducia.
Something could be done. I'll see you again.
Sì. Vada dritto, poi prende il sentiero a sinistra. Non può sbagliare, di là.
Little by little, however, by his courtesy and goodwill, the young expert gains everybody's confidence. They chatter with him, seeking his advice. They beg him to take their photograph. They invite him to their homes to drink a glass of wine. After some time, another important result was achieved. The data collected over many months of work had been tabulated and arranged with the help of specialists. Now the dottore, as they all call him here, has before him a complete account of the district. It is the picture of a deep valley, poor in arable land, inhabited by a dense rural population. Farm produce is still based exclusively on traditional cultivation. Trees, chestnut woods, meadows and pasture land, arable land, vines, and olive groves, almost all for home consumption. The available land is greatly subdivided. The hamlet of Ceretto, for example, where 63 families live, contains 173 acres which are subdivided into no less than 300 allotments. Is it possible to quickly better the conditions of these people's lives? They themselves say no. We've always done it this way. There's no use to change. It is the way of providence. So be it, so be it. We can't do anything by ourselves. It needs the government's millions.
Magari ci fosse qualche rimedio, ma non ci si crede, ormai se ne è tentate di tutte, non si sa più che fare.
The dottore is convinced that something can be done. But to gain trust in the new methods, a concrete proof is needed.
Buongiorno, Faustino.
Buongiorno, Sir Dottore.
Di un po'.
There was Faustino, the one who had thought the dottore to be a tax collector. He grew maize, and maize offered perhaps the best way of showing a convincing improvement.
Gliel'ho già detto.
Guarda questa fotografia.
The photograph showed maize produced from the same earth. The smaller, like Faustino's, the other an American hybrid variety. Which is better?
Ah, non c'è confronto, questo. Ma il seme me lo dareste voi?
Il seme te lo compri da te.
E se va male, chi mi paga?
Non andrà male. Non ti fidi di me?
Che dite, Sir Dottore? Sì che ho fiducia. Ma se io non ci vedo chiaro, le cose non le faccio.
Faustino would have to buy the seed himself, and he doesn't like doing anything he doesn't understand. But he agrees to bring friends to a meeting that evening and have the idea explained. Few attended, and not all were convinced. But eventually a few wished to order the new seed.
Vediamo chi vuol tentare l'esperimento. Chi vuol provare, alzi la mano. Coraggio, su. 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 men agreed to try the new seed, and some days later the sowing took place. Now one could only wait and hope that drought and insects would not ruin the crop. Luckily, all went well, and by September, the new maize was no less than 12 inches taller than the old.
Buongiorno, Sir Dottore.
Buongiorno.
Venite, venite giù. Guardate un po' che differenza. Questo è del campo vicino e questo è mio.
Bravo.
Avevate ragione. Proprio come nella fotografia.
Bene. Molto bene.
There, you explain your theories. I listen. I put them in practice. I do all you say. I've done well, haven't I? The first great battle was won. The time had come to take another step forward. But now it was easier. After the success of the maize, the peasants were much more ready to accept the experts' advice. Treatment of the olive trees was improved. 1 or 2 were persuaded to try using local fertilizers when planting their potatoes. And a few were encouraged to adopt a bookkeeping system, if only an elementary one.
Legna. Lire 1000. Lì. No, non lì, nell'altra colonna. Ecco così. Lire 1000. Comprata fune.
By this time, even the most diffident were seeking advice.
Senta un po', Sir Dottore. Mi scusi, l'altro giorno l'ho vista andare in giro per le vigne con quella specie di strumento.
Ah, il refrattometro.
Beh, insomma, ci siamo capiti. Che ci sarebbe da fare qualche cosa anche col vino?
Tonorelli has seen the dottore examining the grapes with the strange instrument, a refractometer for testing the sugar content. Is there something which could be done for his wine?
Però dovete darmi retta.
Sentiamo, che si potrebbe fare?
It could be improved by stopping the natural fermentation with metabisulfite, and then introducing controlled fermentation with specially selected ferments. Oh, no adulteration for me. They'll say my wine isn't genuine and no one will buy it. Let them taste it, and they won't say that anymore, you'll see.
Ma allora vogliamo provare?
E tentiamo anche questa, se ne trovate tante.
The vintage began on a clear, bright October day. It was like a party, with the whole Tonorelli family there. When the harvesting was over and the grapes collected in the cellar, the moment came for the expert's intervention. Samples were taken and the density of the must was measured. And finally, the selected ferments from Florence University were added. It all seemed a little mysterious to the Tonarelli family. But this challenge too ended in victory, the wine gaining 1.5 degrees in strength. To celebrate the event, the Dottori was invited to supper one evening to hear the story of Michele.
Oh via, raccontali ora la storia di Michele.
This is a really good story. The other day, Michele came to see us, the Luca fellow, you know. I poured him out a glass of wine and said to him, "Now, you'll tell me if there's any metabisulfite in this, won't you?" And he answered, "Be sure, I'll tell you."
No, lui ha detto, se c'è, si sente e si vede anche.
Then I said to him, "Now, be careful you don't make a mistake, because you're a good judge of wine and you'll look a fool." Then he looked at it, looked again. Then he tasted it, tasted again. Then he said, "There's none in this." I didn't tell him. I told him he was really clever and a good judge of wine.
Sei proprio bravo.
Ah, sì, proprio un buon intenditore.
Avete visto? Voi avevate paura.
You see? And you were afraid. Now I must really go.
Mi dispiace. Allora buonasera.
Buonasera. Buonasera.
Arrivederci.
Oh, and don't sell your wine here. I will see that you sell it in Lucca or Viareggio.
Magari, Sor Dottore.
Sor Dottore? Sor Dottore, la ringrazio. Vede, ora che c'è lei...
Now, since you came, we've learned so many things we didn't know before. We feel encouraged by your help. They all say so.
Buonasera.
The results up to then, though modest, had shaken the men out of their apathy. It was the moment to take advantage of this mood to lead them further ahead. By making arrangements with several firms, it was possible to arrange for the farmers a demonstration of agricultural machinery suitable for their land. In some hamlets, they had never seen a tractor before, and its appearance aroused a suspicious amazement. Only the children were unperturbed and took possession of it, treating it like a big toy. But soon, curiosity took the place of amazement, and they drew near and watched with great interest the various demonstrations. One or two began considering a purchase.
E quanto costerebbe sta macchina? Sulle 900.000 lire. Certo è un bel...
They are expensive, but 3 or 4 might share.
È un'idea. Ora ci si pensa. Almeno una ci servirebbe.
Perhaps the most pressing problem of all was the absence of roads. The hamlets with only a mule path could not sell their produce economically. One day, an informal meeting developed, which brought to light a whole number of urgent reasons why the people of Cunha needed a road. It started with the question of timber, which as things stood was hardly worth the bringing down. Then, as people, they were cut off from the rest of the world. Some were worried about the difficulty of the doctor reaching them in a hurry. Others about the money lost from milk and cheese, which they couldn't market. This was a big project, and the mayor was working on it. But couldn't the Dottori suggest a quick way of getting some improvement?
Oh via, dottore, cerchi di inventare qualche altra diavoleria, poi ci fa un fischio. Noi siamo tutti qui, siamo. E va bene, d'accordo, cercherò
He
di
agreed
inventare
to do
delle
his best.
diavolerie che dite. D'accordo.
And the Dottori did think of something. The answer lay in a special tractor which could be used for transport and at the same time could do farm work. But first, the mule paths had to be adapted for it.
A me! Avanti, avanti lentamente! Attenti, attenti! Piano, piano! Stop, stop!
Those were memorable days. From dawn to dusk, the whole hamlet of Cunha worked with unexpected unity and enthusiasm to widen the curves, build retaining walls, and consolidate the road bed. The newly acquired Unimog shared the work. It supplied the power for the drills. to uproot the trees. It contributed to removing all the obstacles they met in their way. One Sunday, the hamlet of Cuna saw the arrival of the first motorized vehicle ever to drive on its cobbled streets. There was truly a great rejoicing.
Pronti? Ecco fatto.
This day of celebration was not an end, but a beginning of new achievements for the whole community. At first, life appeared to go on much as usual. Another spring came round. Gradually, differences appeared. The people of Cuna had always made their own cheeses, each family choosing their own shape and size according to their needs and inclinations. Now they needed to agree upon a standard formula. Each had his own ideas. But finally, they did agree. And with a standard product, they were able to join together and sell their cheeses in towns like Lucca and Pisa. The other hamlets were not slow to appreciate what the Cuna episode could mean to them. In due course, all the mountain hamlets did something to improve their mule tracks. It was not always much of a road, but it did mean that tractors could do some of the heaviest transportation. At the same time, other projects for the future were being prepared. A survey was carried out for a small irrigation scheme, which could mean richer land and more profitable crops. Already, some peasants were growing a pharmaceutical crop, salvia, which, when ready for harvesting, should fetch a good price from the makers of vermouth and liqueurs. Others in the valley were planting new orchards of peaches for sale in the nearby towns. By this time, it was apparent the experiment was proving a success. Experts and visitors from many countries were coming to Borgo Mozzano to study the results and to see for themselves what had been going on. Seen from above, Borgo Mozzano looks always the same, but in reality, very much has changed. Farming is developing rationally. Manual work has been partly taken over by machines. The Unimog has begun a regular service to all the hamlets, and the farmers' incomes have increased by more than the cost of the agronomist. But above all, the spirit of the people has changed, and this was the most important result. Once release the talent hidden in a man, and troubles, problems, difficulties fall away.